evening to all of our viewers from Yerushalayim. Last time we spoke about the comparison to the Yom Kippurim War. And Baruch Hashem, we got some very interesting feedback. People were very, very inquisitive to know a few more details. So we would just like to continue more or less what we spoke about last time. And we'd like to speak about the title is the soft, sensitive reasonings of the heart. The paradigmatic example of that, of course, was Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. We recollect very, very vividly that between 80 and 90 Bachrim, Yeshivas Mir, right after Yom Kippurim, were told by their parents to make arrangements to come back to America immediately because the danger was imminent. And they actually believed, a lot of people believed that we would need Nisim v'Nifloyos for the Jewish people to be saved. And indeed, we did have Nisim v'Nifloyos and the Jewish people were saved. We paid a big price, but Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael was saved. So the Bachram asked Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Zechet Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Bracha, Moron Rosh Yeshiva of Mir, should they obey their parents or should they stay? And most of the yeshiva at that time consisted of Americans. So Chaim Shmulevitz said, according to the strict halacha, insofar as a sakana, a danger, is concerned, so there's no question about it, it's dangerous to remain here in Eretz Israel at this time. In addition, there's a mitzvah of kibbud avim, and your parents support you. So there's no question you don't have any independence. You're dependent upon them totally. So there's another reason that you should obey them and abide by whatever they decided. However, you could tell your parents, my personal feelings of the heart. In other words, till now, according to the strict halacha, so that was based on the cold, calculating reasonings of the mind. Halacha is practical. Halacha is quite rigid. But Reb Chaim Shmulevitz added, and he would appreciate it very much if the Bachram did mention this to their parents. Just like to add that the pasuk says in Shmuel, B'Shas, during the time that Shaul was pursuing David, who was totally innocent, to kill him. Shaul was deranged, fixated that David has to be eliminated. So as he was pursuing, David HaMelech came into a cave and he fell asleep. Anshe David, the people of David, mentioned this to David, and they said, Hinei hayoyim asher omar Hashem Elokecha, hinei anochi nosein oisa yivcha biyodecha v'asisa l'kasheyita beinecha. This old man said to David, behold the day in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy, Shaul, into your hand, and you shall do to him as it shall seem good unto you. So this was an opportunity. David's people told him, this is the opportunity that you have, that Kadosh Baruch Hu granted you to eliminate your enemy. And what did David do? The next line tells us, Yichre says, Knaf ha'me'il asher l'Shaul balot. David arose and he cut off the edge of Shaul's robe. Afterwards, he stopped the people of David HaMelech. David HaMelech stopped his own people from doing what he had the opportunity to do. They were interested in eliminating Shaul once and for all. He restrained them. And then afterwards, with great courage, by Yakom David, And when Shaul awoke, he bowed down to him. He bowed his face to the earth, prostrated himself to Shaul, and he said, "Hinei hayoyim hazeh ro'ei necho, as asher nesoncho Hashem hayoyim biyodi b'mavo." That God gave me into your hands. I have tangible proof that Shaul, you Shaul, had been at my mercy, and nevertheless, I did not kill you. Even though the Gemara says, self-defense is permitted, and even though I was allowed al pi din to defend myself and to kill you, I showed you that I want tranquility and a peaceful interpersonal relationship with you. And why do you pursue me? Says David HaMelech. You're a Mashiach Hashem. Or Mashiach Hashem should not do evil. But you're not an evil person, so why should you commit such a terrible aveira? To be right after me. Who am I? I'm a parsha echad. I'm not even according to your covet, somebody that you should pursue. You're a dignified king. You're a great person. Why should you pursue after a flea like me? And Shaul HaMelech realized exactly what happened, and he told David HaMelech after he broke down and cried, "Tzaddik ato mimeni, you are more righteous than me." Why? Ki ato gemaltani atoivo, because you rendered unto me good, vani gemalticha haro, and I rendered unto you bad. And what was the good? That al pi din Torah, strict halacha, could have killed you, stopped the redifa, stop the pursuit of an innocent person. Nevertheless, I cut off the ill part of the robe, the corner of the robe, and I'm showing you this, that I love you, you're my father, I want to have a good relationship with you. So we would assume that this is one of the greatest, and Rashi Be'emes says that this shows something unusual. This was unusual. That even in such moments of difficult trials and tribulations, there's a sudden moment in which a great character, the greatness, the true greatness of a character is expressed, and that's David HaMelech's character, both morally and surreally, in a surreal way. He forwent the opportunity of killing his deadliest enemy, and on the contrary, he only wanted peace and harmony, and he called him Avi, my father. So there's no question about it. This is a great, outstanding moral deed. Rashi points this out, and also the Chazal point this out. However, said of Chaim Shmulevitz, we have a Gemara in Brachos. The Gemara in Brachos says that David HaMelech was a zoken, he was old, they covered him with clothes in his old age, but unfortunately, they did not warm him. So the Gemara asks, what's the reason for that? So the answer is, Omer Rabbi Chanina, whoever treats garments contemptuously will in the end derive no benefit from them. And what is the reason that David HaMelech treated garments contemptuously? So the Gemara says he cut off the corner of Shaul's robe. That's contemptuous. That's showing a disdain to clothing. In any way, that's disrespectful. We understand the vaza, the word contemptuous, means if you think something or someone is worthless and you show it, so you behaved in a very, very hateful way, contemptuous way. David HaMelech planned this, and by cutting off the knaf me'iloi was the greatest demonstration of the fact that he is really devoted to Shaul. He's dedicated to Shaul, and he wants to maintain a good relationship with Shaul. This is Mevazes Avedon. There couldn't be a loftier, more ethical goal than this. So why was he punished? Why the punishment? So the Rosh Hashiva said that he does not know the answer to that question. He cannot answer this question, why there was a punishment. What do we see? That even according to the strict halacha, the very, very strict halacha, David HaMelech was right. It was not only Al Pi Din was he right, but it was a very high, exalted, lofty moral act. But factually, in Mitzias, realistically, he treated the garment with disdain by cutting off the edge. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz said, and these are the exact words of Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. I heard it and I wrote it down. Chaim Shmulevitz said that even according to the strict din, halacha l'maisa, no question about it, your parents are right, and indeed there is a danger in staying in Eretz Yisrael, but you should know that the mamash shchina, the mother shchina of Eretz Yisrael, will not be moichel you. And everybody was extremely moved when they heard that. And the best recollection that I have is that when they told it over to their parents, the parents said that indeed you may stay. They were very, very impressed with that. And at the end, they told them to stay. Today, I was informed that many Bachrim, not only to our yeshiva, returned, but also to other yeshivas returned. A tremendous display of courage in difficult times. The Rosh Hashiva of Gate said more than Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz said, you should not leave. However, the Rosh Hashiva of Gate said it's the correct thing now to go back to Eretz Yisrael as a sign of support for Klal Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, we saw, no question about it, Bachrim heroically and courageously came back to be with their brethren here in Eretz Yisrael. And here in Eretz Yisrael, most of the girls' schools stayed. The girls' schools are full. Baruch Hashem, everybody's doing whatever they can in Avodas Hashem, pleading mercy for the difficult times, turbulent times that we're going through. And everybody is impressed with the headlines. We had, now that we know exactly what happened, more or less, Nazism is the proper term to use, such depravity, such atrocities that defy belief. So we see that untrained, lacking proper arms, nevertheless, local security teams defended the Gaza border and other people, farmers, doctors, teachers, all residents of the border areas of all the communities engaged thousands of terrorists infiltrating their home, repelling attacks sometimes for hours until relief can come. Unbelievable heroism. Here we have a heroic soldier that dies after jumping on a grenade to save 8 of his friends. He was 18 years old and his friends tried to restrain him, but they could not restrain him. He jumped over his friends, fell on a hand grenade, shattered to smithereens, but 8 friends were saved. These were Ma'asim B'chol Yom. This occurred every single moment. We want to know exactly what dedication is. We want to know what true love is. So we have over here a young man that threw himself on a grenade too to save the Kala he was supposed to marry. At the end, she was also killed brutally. He was hoping that she would be saved. But he himself threw himself on the grenade immediately, instinctively, and she was saved for a while. At the end, she was brutally murdered. And the ring that he had bought was in between them. So we see great, great profiles of courage and heroism that also defy belief. The opposite of what we mentioned a moment ago. And everybody that comes back and shows his support for Eretz Yisrael, this is where he belongs. We're not speaking that people should just pick up their possessions and come here at this time. Come by Yeshiva Bachram, that they belong here, the girls' seminaries, which they really belong. So this is the place for them to be. And those that came back will surely be rewarded, Mrs. Hashem Yisbarach, because this is a great undertaking. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael really, really appreciates it. We'll just reiterate the idea a little bit more from a, not so much from a halachic point of view, although it's also true la halacha, but as a very, very basic principle in Torah wisdom. And that basically is expressed by the Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah says as follows. Of course, there's a halacha for us to go in God's ways. We have to go in God's ways. And to go in God's ways, of course, usually refers to chesed, kindness. But before we speak about Molachta B'drachov, so Meir Simcha says as follows. We'll read it in English, this is the English translation, to save time. When we look into the ways of Torah, basically speaking, there are two categories of mitzvahs. One category is mitzvahs maisius, precepts, ordinances, chukim of God for man to do and not to do, insofar as engaging in activities or disengaging activities, vis-a-vis the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's called mitzvahs bein adam l'mokom. Examples, of course, happen to be idolatry. The punishment for idolatry is very severe. We have different punishments. We have kares. We have other types of capital punishment. We have dinei shamayim. There's debts like skila, and there's also malchus, of the machalas asurais, for example. These are all mitzvahs bein adam l'mokom, and the punishments are clearly delineated in the Torah, and they're quite severe, very, very severe. These mitzvahs are bein adam l'mokom, and we have another category of mitzvahs which is bein adam l'chaveroi. This is a man's interpersonal relationship to his fellow man. When man transgresses them, causing among his fellow men strife, machloikes, or perhaps damaging them by lashon hara, spreading vicious gossip, or rechilos, damaging stories from hearsay that are not true, or gezel, cheating in ways where there is no punishment in dinei adam. So these and similar sins are not punished by Beis Din. In the halacha for these sins, there's no malchus, there's no lashes, there's no kares. They're not going to be exterminated by heaven. There's no chiyuvei misa, death penalties. We see that basic penalties and punishments, on occasion very severe ones, are only exacted by somebody who's mechal Shabbos. He's chayiv misa, avodah zarah. He's chayiv misa, desecrated Shabbos, yontif, malchus. Eats machalas asuras, forbidden foods. There's malchus. But for all of the interpersonal transgressions of corruption, so we don't have any severe punishments mentioned in the Torah, and we don't have light punishments either. Why is that? So the Meir Simcha told us, unbelievable, that the minimum existence required for man is that he does not transgress the mitzvahs maisius. For an individual, in order for him to exist and continue to exist, so you have to make sure that you fulfill or you do not transgress, you do not corrupt the mitzvahs, the commandments between man and God. Idol worship, Chilul Shabbos, kashrus. If he transgressed these sins of Avodah Zarah or Chilul Shabbos, he can cease to exist by receiving capital punishment by Bezdin, according to the halacha, or the Dinei Shemayim. That's for the individual. But for the tzibur, it's the opposite. The existence of the Jewish community depends on the realization of nimusiyos, of refined behavior, interpersonal behavior that is simply permeated and saturated with kindness, generosity, respect, dedication, devotion to someone else's welfare. That's the existence of a tzibur. And the Yerushalmi says explicitly that the generation of David, they were all tzaddikim, they were righteous people. Since there was, unfortunately, between them strife, machloikes, vicious gossip, and informing one on the other, like the Arabs who worked for the Jews in the south and all the kibbutzim, and they pretended to be friendly with them. And there was one Arab that they caught. He worked with a family, a terrorist, for 20 years, and he was part of the family. They gave him presents. They invited him to all the simchas, and they were very happy that they found, after so many people in Gaza, one individual that had a lofty spirit that was interested in peace. So they treated him like a brother. He was the one that turned his back on them, and he killed an entire family, 5 people. In addition, this individual confessed that he informed for money all the executives of Hamas, all of the hierarchy, exactly where everything is located. He knew every sensitive security detail, and he informed them. Unbelievable. Defies belief, like I said a moment ago. But by David HaMelech, there was informing one and the other, so they would lose all the wars. In the generation of Achov, there was no Lashon Hara. There was no informing one and the other. And when they used to go to war, they used to conquer and win wars. Even though Achov was an Oved Avodah Zarah. His wife is famous, Jezebel. So Meir Simcha tells us a klal, and he draws the conclusion from this Yerushalmi. It's a general principle that if the tzibur is corrupt and Avodah Zarah, as we mentioned a moment ago, Chilul Shabbos, etc., it makes no difference, because the Shrinah rests on Klal Yisrael even in Tumah. Like we read in Parashas Achrei Moshe Yom Kippurim, V'chein Yaser Lo Yom Moed, Asher Sheichen Itom B'toich Tumasam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu resides there, besides within Klal Yisrael, even in their defilement. Says Rashi, Tmeim, the individuals are defiled. The mother, Shchina, like Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says, never departs. Shchin is Lashon Nekeva, she's with them. But when they're corrupt in Midas and Beron Chavera, an interpersonal relationship, so then the Pasuk says, when I see Klal Yisrael corrupt, in mitzvahs Bain, Odom Lechavera, so Kadosh Baruch Hu departs and there's Hester upon him. This is the Yisod. And in conclusion, we drew this out a little bit too long, but we have to realize in a tzibur to exist, for us to continue to exist, we have to ameliorate, we have to weed out insidious, disjunctive midos and emotions. When it comes to a community, there can be no crime. There can be no robbery, stealing, civil corruption. Otherwise, we're reduced to animals of the jungle. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu will punish the society immediately without delay, to the extent that we are an endangered species. That is why all of humanity, which was corrupt in the time of Noach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the flood. Why did he bring the flood? There was Avodah Zarah as well, other Averis. Le'nechtam gzar dinom elo al hagezel, says the Meir Simcha. No. Once the society disintegrated, so that was the end of the society, and because of interpersonal failures, the world was totally destroyed. This is something which we have to bear in mind. And today, we see the kindness, the generosity. There were 15,000 individuals that for 39 weeks demonstrated against the government not to pursue their plan for a judicial overhaul. They're called leftists, extreme leftists. Nevertheless, in the times when the very existence of Klal Yisrael is called into question, so 15,000 of these people gather money, supplies to help the people that were dislocated in the south. There's 200,000 people today without homes, the survivors. They're all, I spoke with them Friday, I saw them, they're in a hotel not far from where we live, shell-shocked, traumatized, without anything. And these people are helping them. And they're working together with Yeshiva Bachim, who are donating blood and also bone marrow. And last week, 150 Yeshiva Bachrim went to Hadassah Hospital because the Arab maintenance people did not show up, and they cleaned up the whole hospital. So everybody is participating through doing charity, through doing good works, but moreover, there's an element of togetherness. All differences are being put aside. And once we have this element of togetherness, so the Jewish people will prevail. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh L'Bracha, was someone who was highly unusual. As everyone knows, the Rosh Yeshiva was a highly emotional person. But just to illustrate, if possible, one illustration of what it means for a leader to be involved with his people in a time of crises. So this happened in 1976, if I'm not mistaken, when on June 27th, Arabs, two Palestinians, I should say, hijacked the Air France flight, redirected it to the Entebbe International Airport in Uganda. And they held, for a short period of time, 272 hostages. They released everybody that was not Jewish, and they maintained 102 Jewish passengers. This took place on June 27, 1976. On July 4th, they had the Thunderbolt operation that saved all of these people. It was a major miracle. 5 Israeli soldiers were wounded, and one, the leader, was killed. That was the brother of the Prime Minister of today, Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu's brother. Anyway, this was the period of time that they were kidnapped and hostage. Toward the end of June, Chaim Shmulevitz's son, Avram Shmulevitz, had a child that was born, a boy. He was by us many times years ago when we got together with our children in Hebron. So we told her the story, very, very nice story. I heard from Avram too. So his mother decided to have a home birth. So she had a home birth. So this was around June 29th or so, June 30th. So the next day, July 1st, Avram knocked on the door of Chaim Shmulevitz, who was sitting there, shaking, mumbling something, Chaim Shmulevitz knew Shas and Poskim word for word. He went through the Torah basis 400 times. He could say each paragraph backwards. We saw it, so you don't have to say where Chaim Shmulevitz was. Kol HaTorah Kulo, Sefer Torah, Mehuderes, alive, Sefer Torah, alive Shas, and alive Shulchan Aruch. So we told him, dear father, I have a mazel tov coming. We had a child. So Chaim Shmulevitz did not respond, continue. Another day he went in, same thing. Says, mazel tov, Baruch Hashem, everything went Shiur, everything went properly. So hope you'll give me a mazel tov and a bracha. The Chaim Shmulevitz did not react. This was already on July 3rd. So 2 or 3 times he went in there, no response. So he decided, didn't ask any questions. He decided to leave it. July 5th, Chaim Shmulevitz knocks on the door where Avram Shmulevitz lived, and he said, Mazel Tov, Baruch Hashem, I heard that you had a boy and everything went Shiur. Mazel Tov. And we benched the boy and the Yoledes. Should only have great fortune. So, the Avram asked him, what happened a few days ago? There was no response when I mentioned to you that we had a new baby boy. So Chaim Shmulevitz said, when you came in, so that was in the midst of the terrible tragedy of the hostages being kept in Uganda under Idi Amin. So I was praying fervently, saying Tillim. I was totally involved with this terrible tragedy and catastrophe. I could not for 1 second free myself from this involvement, even to tell you a mazel tov. Yesterday, a miracle took place, Baruch Hashem, they were saved. So now I can express my warmth and my happiness and offer you a sincere mazel tov. This is how Reb Chaim Shmulevitz identified with the tzara. This is how Reb Chaim Shmulevitz had a sympathy and a deep empathy for tzara. He could not help himself. He just could not say mazel tov. To that extent, in the depth of his personality and his soul, he was involved in. And as you mentioned last time, we also have to give our deepest gratitude to the soldiers that are doing their utmost to protect Klal Yisrael. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting us. but these are his shluchim, and we should remember what Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the great poskim of all time, Rosh Hashiva of Kol Torah, told two Talmidim that wanted his permission to go for 2 or 3 days to pray in the Mekaymis HaKadoshim, in the holy places, like in Tzfat, where the Ariyat Kaddish is buried, where the Beis Yosef is buried, and of course the Shivas Kol Torah is in Yerushalayim. So Shlomo Zalman told him, "What do you have to go so far?" Shivas Kol Torah is in Yerushalayim and Beit Vegan, which is a 5-minute walk from the military cemetery in Har Herzl. You want to go to Mekaymis HaKadoshim? Just take a 5-minute walk to Har Herzl. You can pray there, because everybody that's buried there was a Shemer Yisrael, and he is a Kadosh, and that is Mekaymis HaKadoshim. So these are things that we have to remember. And we have to remember that we Jewish people are unique people, insofar as we have 3 symptoms of who we are. We have 3 features. We're Rachmanim, we're Baishanim, and we're Goimlei Chasadim. Passionate people. We exercise self-effacement, and also we're involved in chesed, in kindness and generosity. The Rambam pointed out, as well as the John, it doesn't say mirachamim. It says rachmonim. What's the difference? It's possible for any individual in certain circumstances to do an act of kindness and generosity. But that doesn't mean that he is a ish, he's a personality, and he's a man of compassion. He can do a compassionate act. That's called merachim, but he's not a rachamun. A rachamun is somebody who cannot help himself. He has to be involved in compassion. Can't help himself. There's no freedom of choice, as it were. That's the same thing, but Baishan doesn't say Baishponim, self-effacement. Goimlei Chasadim will always be generous. In other words, these 3 features belong to the who is he, not what he is. What is he? He's capable of doing a compassionate act. He's capable of having some sort of compassion and crying by a tragedy. That's what he is. He has a certain capability, has a certain capacity. Commiserating with somebody's sorrow. But he's not a compassionate person. That's not who he is. And the Jewish people, insofar as who they are, what their true identity is they are compassionate in character and in personality. They're self-effacing, and also they're going to chasadim. They, with the soft, sensitive reason of the heart, they only do charitable deeds. And the Rambam already points out what chesed is. The Rambam asked the famous question that Rashi asked, that in the parish of Arayis, of immorality, of adultery, incest, so the Torah says, "V'isha sheyikach hachoisai." If a man shall take his sister, makes no difference whether it's his father's daughter or his mother's daughter, and commit an act of incense, so the pasuk says, "Chesedu," and both shall bear their iniquity, and they'll be chayiv in kares. So we don't understand how the Torah says the word chesed. By Kadosh Baruch Hu, we understand why the Torah says Rav Chesed. Does kindness unlimited. Very strange lashon. So the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, 3rd Chelek, chapter 53 says that he already mentioned in Pirkei Avos that the word chesed does not mean, the exact meaning, the etymology of chesed does not mean kindness. It depends on the context that it's used. So when it's used insofar as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned, Rav Chesed, Olam Chesed Yiboneh, so it means it's an abundance of Chesed, it's an excess of Chesed, it transcends the normal bounds of good, it excels in deeds beyond ethical duty and beyond the very norm of Chesed. In other words, Chesed within the context of kindness means extreme Chesed, unlimited Chesed. A person can't help himself. He has to be kind. He has to be generous. But when the context is arayas, incest, so it's also the same meaning. It's excess. It's extreme. It's a perpetration that's so abhorrent, so offensive, denying all standards of decency, and this act loses its moral shame, and this act is also labeled chesed, but it's in the context of incest, and therefore it's also limitless, but not insofar as kindness is concerned, but so far as depravity and evil is concerned. What do we see in Klal Yisrael? Zelu umazeh. We see the depravity and the evil that defies the belief from the enemy. And on the other hand, we see the real identity of the Jewish people. Everybody, no exception. Man, woman, child, no exception. It's an extreme, excessive kindness and generosity. It's one of self-identification, one of sympathy, and one of very, very deep empathy.